It's a new day for planning. Well, joining us today to speak about that, Ted Stank, Professor of Supply Chain Management at the University of Tennessee. Ted, good to see you once again. Welcome.
Thanks, Russell. Great to be here with you.
Ted, I want to talk about cadence, I want to talk about horizon, I want to talk about what's going on in connection with that in the planning process. So walk us through that, if you would.
Okay. So one of the things we discovered a couple of years ago is that people spend a lot of time thinking of the sexier things about supply chain management, you know, big global ships coming across the ocean, getting stuck in the Suez Canal, manufacturing, what Amazon is doing in warehousing, all that stuff that's really cool. But what we tend to ignore is that it starts with planning. And if we have good, solid plans, a lot of things that we do in the operational world can get tremendously simplified. And as we started looking deeper into planning and working with some of the companies that are in our collaborative, we found out that there's a lot of antiquated processes within planning. And so and this all came out particularly strongly during COVID, as we all saw with toilet paper running out, all the familiar stories that we had. So we've worked with a couple of companies to kind of dig into their planning processes. And what we've figured out is that most of these processes haven't really inherently changed much over the last several decades, and they're still based on some assumptions from an earlier time about how well we could capture information, process that information, and use it to drive decisions. And we've seen a lot of complexity in planning processes that probably doesn't need to be there, and is what's caused a lot of variability in what we can find on the shelves, for example, in CPG. And so we want to talk a little bit about how we might be able to change that.
All right. We're going to delve into that. But one of the things that, to use your phrase, I suppose is probably not all that sexy in supply chain management, time horizon. Why is it so long? Walk us through that.
So when you think about time horizons, in the days when we really started talking about articulated materials requirements planning, for example, in the auto industry, we're talking 1950s, 1960s. Not a time where you could really access demand information quickly, get it to some central area where you had enough processing capability to really churn and process on it. And even if we couldn't really get our supply chains to move faster than what was available from an asset base at the time. You know, we had factories that were using long batches, we put things on big trucks, we put it out. So there was lead times involved. And so the whole planning environment said, let's look pretty far into the future. We're talking 4 months, 5 months even for scheduling, not just long range planning, but for scheduling, so that we can accurately capture data, get it into our systems, and feed that into procurement, manufacturing, and distribution planning and get it out there. So everything we looked at was months in advance because that was the lead times that we had to deal with in the physical world.
You talk about capturing data, and clearly data is so integral to the entire process, but there's so much data out there. What kind of data do we really need to be capturing? What do we need to rely upon? What's going to help us improve this process? What do you say?
So great point, because when I first started in this business 30 plus years ago, we had a data problem, and it was that we couldn't get data. We couldn't get enough data. It wasn't good data. It wasn't clean.
Now we're swimming in it.
We have the opposite problem today, right? We have so much data. How do we find the good stuff and capture that information? And what we're seeing today, I mean, I don't have my cell phone with me right now, but I'd love to hold it up, because what we can capture because of the way people are ordering product, even if we're going bricks and mortar, we can instantaneously capture that demand information, and we can put it in a cloud, and within a day, we can get it into our processing areas and start churning it with the different analytical tools that we have to kind of see what's really going on. And yet our processes are structured so that we still think we can't get information for weeks, we can't process it really well, and so we still build in these artificial lead times for the products that we could probably get instantaneous demand information. I mean, to me, Amazon's brilliance is pushing us all to order from our cell phones, so they capture that demand information immediately. Then they have Amazon data services so that we can send it all to a server farm and do all kinds of crazy analytics with it almost in real time.
You know, what I'm hearing when you say this, it seems that there is a gap between what we can do and what we actually are doing in terms of the data that is there and that we are utilizing. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not proposing that this is widespread for every product that every company has out there. What I'm proposing is that every company should be looking at their product offerings and say, which ones can we just be rate-based? When we see what demand is yesterday, let's push that through manufacturing. We have some products that are high volume, they're always going to sell. Let's crank those out. But for the ones that we need to work in for product mix, for different kinds of specialty items, let's use different kinds of planning for those kinds of things.
Ted, you and I are speaking to each other in September of 2021. We still are dealing with the COVID situation, with the Delta variant, et cetera. How has the pandemic, the lockdown, how has COVID affected the process that we've been talking about?
When I talk to my colleagues in industry, they're saying that even if they've been working for 30, 40 years, never have we hit a time where everything in the supply chain is being challenged. There's always times where things are being challenged, right? But there's usually 80 or 90% of everything that we do that just stays standard and we don't have to worry about it. It's on automatic. What happened starting in winter, spring of 2020 and continues today is every part of our supply chain is being challenged, from our ability to get supplies in, from our ability to move things through Asian ports, for example, and into US facilities where we have slowdowns. I haven't checked today. The last I saw, there was like 70 ships off of LA Long Beach waiting to get, port side. And demand is swinging like crazy too, based on even on local markets and what's happening with the disease and the pandemic in local markets. And so it has essentially challenged all these things that we thought was, the old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, today everything's broke. And so we're having to really look into things that we hadn't looked into a lot in the past.
Yeah, I need some serious fixing. Let me ask you this. Quite aside from the difficulties that so many companies have not handled properly, can you point to a company that has in fact taken on this challenge and succeeded during this COVID period of time? Is there someone out there that really is an exemplar of what to do?
Yeah, we work pretty closely with several different companies. One of them is a local Knoxville company, Bush Brothers Beans. Go into lockdown pandemic early on, and we don't know when we're going to be able to go out and go shopping again. So what are the kind of things people buy? Let's buy food products that are nourishing, no perishability. We can put them in our shelves.
Let's buy beans.
Baked beans went crazy in March, April, May of 2020. And it caused the folks at Bush Beans to really challenge the way they were planning. Craig Ellenen's Chief Supply Chain Officer at Bush Brothers and experimented with a lot of different things. And one of the things they did was, hey, we've got a few SKUs of baked beans that are our basics. They're our real staples. Let's not play around with them. We know what's happening with demand. Let's schedule them every single day that we make beans. Let's make a ton of them. Now, we also have these other SKUs of beans that, different flavors for different markets and different demographics, for example, that we still want to be able to make and sell. Let's use our more complex planning processes for those. But for the 80% of the stuff that we know everybody's buying right now, because we can look at the supermarket demand, for example, let's just blow those out. And I think Bush really did a great job of segmenting out and not messing around with the stuff that was moving off the shelves. Let's just make it.
Is that something that you feel is applicable to most everybody else, regardless of the vertical they may find themselves in?
At some level of conceptualization, I think yes, right? I mean, baked beans are a relatively simple business, relatively compared to some really complex industries. But I think that there is some level of segmentation that every company can do and say, hey, these are our staples. Let's let them fly off the shelves. Let's keep them in production and keep moving. And then let's spend our time, our limited bandwidth, and our limited processing capabilities on the ones that really make the most sense to really figure that out.
It's a great story, and one that I'm hoping that people are listening to and will be plugging in that to improve their processes. Listen, Ted, I know that you are busy here at the conference, but you found time to sit down and speak with us. Thank you very much.
Russell, enjoy it like I do every year. Great to talk to you.
Good. Ted Stank, University of Tennessee, speaking with us today about a new day in your planning. Thanks for watching.